Now back, and I'm honored to say for a seventh time with me here on Next on the Tee is my all-time favorite author and one of my all-time favorite individuals, Keith Hirshland. Keith has become a wonderful friend over the last few years. He's an Emmy Award-winning TV producer. He's produced shows for ESPN, ESPN2, and the Golf Channel. Keith was among the original people that started the Golf Channel back in 1995. He's written 3 wonderful books. The first is my all-time favorite book, and that is Cover Me Boys, I'm Going In, Tales of the Two from a Broadcast Brat. It's a fantastic read, folks. I can't recommend it highly enough. He's got 2 other great books as well called Big Flies and The Flower Girl Murder. He's got a 4th one coming out, I hope soon, Murphy, Murphy. I'm dying to read that book, and it happens, like I said at the top of the show, one of the characters in the book is our good friend Matthew Lawrence. Keith's lovely wife, Sarah, is the CEO of the U.S. Olympic Committee. They've been traveling all over the world this year supporting our national teams, and I'm very excited to have Keith back with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Keith, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Chris. I'm always excited when I get a message that says that you want some retired old TV guy to come and join you on your show. So it's always a thrill. And I hadn't realized we'd been together. This will be the 7th time. They go by
how about
so
that?
quickly, and I know you do such a great job, and it's always so fun talking to you that I always feel like it's just sitting down and chatting with an old friend. So I appreciate you very much, and your support is always over the top and much appreciated. And we gotta be in this thing together. And I love Mitch and Matthew, and I'm thrilled that you have Jane Gettys on the show tonight because when I first started with ESPN doing their golf, she was winning golf tournaments, and when I moved over to the Golf Channel, she was actually in a playoff, I believe, with Kari Webb in 1996 at a tournament in Orlando, and it was, if I remember correctly, the first win for Kari on U.S. soil. I think she had won the Women's British. She was a 22-year-old kid at the time, and just a superstar in the making. And she won the Health South inaugural in Orlando on our air. And I remember Jane being in a playoff with her for 3 or 4 holes. So maybe Jane will tell you a story or two about competing with the greats of the game. I mean, she's a heck of a player. She was a lot of fun to be around too. So I'm looking forward to listening to your conversation with Jane.
Well, I can't thank you enough for setting that up. I mean, we wouldn't be having that conversation later tonight if it wasn't for you. So I appreciate your continued support, Keith, and for not only for setting up this conversation with Jane, but just sort of the way you've been over the last few years. You're outstanding, and I can't thank you enough for all of that.
Well, it's my pleasure, and something tells me you and Jane would have connected at some point with or without my help. So I'm happy to help always.
I appreciate you. So, Keith, like I said at the top of the show, you've already got 3 great books, and you've teased Murphy a couple of times when you've been on recently. So talk about where you're at with that book and when we're all going to be able to get our hands on a copy of it.
Yeah, I wish I knew. I was, I've been champing at the bit because I sent the draft to the publishers a few months ago and was kind of, just biding my time waiting for them to get back to me, and sent out a couple of emails and got no response and thought, oh gosh, I'm being this pesky author, that they've got, hundreds of authors in their stable, and I'm the, one of the new people on the totem pole, and here I am pestering them. And finally I got an email back from my contact there, a great guy named Bobby Collins, and he said, sorry it's taken so long. We really wanted Cover Me Boys to get some more traction before we started to release a new book from you, because they had, as I think I told you, they had they'd signed me up and re-released Cover Me Boys in February of this year. So they didn't want to rush out another book by me or another title by me so quickly. Anyway, he said, here's the first draft. So I got a look at their first draft of edits and went and made a couple of new ones on my own and sent them back to them. And they responded right away saying, thank you. We'll take a look at these. And oh, by the way, do you have any ideas for cover art? So I gave him a couple of thoughts that I had about cover art for the book, and he thanked me again and said they'd get right to work on it. And that was a couple of weeks ago. So I'm hoping in the next 2 or 3 weeks I'll get something back, and we can start telling folks how they can pre-order or order Murphy in the Case of Serious Crisis. So getting to be an exciting time. I'm really excited about the rollout because I'm expecting our friend Matthew to buy at least a dozen books and give them out to family and friends. So.
Indeed. Yeah, I can't wait to read it. And like I say, I hope he is the done it and who done it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what his character is like in the book.
I'm not going to give away any secrets, but he might be.
I can't wait to read it. And Keith, as you just mentioned, Cover Me Boys and the re-release and all of that. For the listeners who haven't joined us the last several times that you've been on the show and are going, oh, what is this Cover Me Boys? Let everybody know what that book's all about.
Well, thanks, Chris. It's a memoir of my nearly 40 years in the broadcast television industry. Full title is Cover Me Boys, I'm Going In, Tales of the Tube from a Broadcast Brat. And it starts out as an homage to my parents. My folks were local broadcast pioneers in the northern Nevada area, Reno, Nevada. They started a television station there. And so I kind of grew up, as a little kid running around the halls of the station and trying to glean as much knowledge and to see how my folks, started a business and kept it going and just hired and recruited, some of the most talented people in the world to help them run this TV station. And when they passed away, Sarah and I were, over on Maui where they lived, going through all their belongings. And we came across a box that had a bunch of memorabilia in it, some awards that my dad had won and some commendations and letters from presidents and senators and, some memorabilia from my dad's time in the Navy. And Sarah, who hadn't gotten to know them, sadly, very well, said, don't let this be your kids looking in a box when you're gone and saying, my gosh, we had no idea that, Dad helped start ESPN2 and was one of the first 40 people hired at the Golf Channel and won an Emmy and knew Tiger Woods and had traveled around the world producing golf and, had this amazing career. And so she said, start, writing some stories down in journal form just to let these, so the kids would have, some idea of what we did in our life. And that somehow turned into a book. So it's about 450 pages of stories about TV and stories about golf and a lot of stories about golf TV that I think that a lot of your listeners might have some fun with.
So Keith, let's switch gears a little bit. As you talk about television, and the thing that's excited me about you on top of the books over the last several months is I'm starting to see you get involved a little bit more on the TV side. We saw you, earlier this year with the guys on TNT, back with the PGA Championship, and it just sort of wets my whistle and hope that a great talent like you might start doing a little bit more here and there, and even start to tie in like with your wife Sarah. And for those who don't know, Sarah's the CEO of the U.S. Olympic Committee. So as we see golf in the Olympics coming up in 2020, you starting to do a little bit more. Could that expand more and have you doing something with golf in the Olympics or other things as we look ahead to the 2020 golf season?
Well, you're nice. You're nice to think those kind of thoughts. I dabble here and there. I was fortunate enough to have worked with, actually been a part of the hiring process when Golf Channel hired Brian Anderson. He had kind of grown up in Texas playing baseball and was moved into the broadcasting arena and was doing play-by-play for a minor league team in Texas and was also doing some sideline reporting for the San Antonio Spurs. And when we were looking for a golf play-by-play announcer, he sent in his tape, and we thought this kid had a tremendous amount of potential. Anyway, we hired him on the spot basically, and he turned out to be a great broadcaster for Golf Channel for a handful of years before he got his dream job of working for a Major League Baseball team, and has been the voice of the Milwaukee Brewers since he left the Golf Channel, as well as Now he does NBA on TNT. He does a lot of the NCAA tournament stuff for Turner. So when Turner got the call to do the last, they had obviously had the rights to do early round coverage of the PGA Championship for years, but because of the schedule change, they were still in NBA playoff mode. And Ernie Johnson, who had done their golf, was also doing their NBA telecasts, and he chose the NBA over golf, which meant Brian was going to be doing the early round coverage of the PGA Championship. So he was nice enough to call me and say, listen, I'm going to be doing the PGA Championship, and I'd really love you by my side and, to feed me nuggets in my ear and give me direction and help me out a little bit. And, I couldn't resist. So I said yes, but, I don't think that portends a return to the truck for me, even though in addition to that, I do a handful of things for friends over the course of the summer. If there's a little golf show that they would like some help on, I'm always happy to lend my hand and lend my expertise. But I'm not sure you'll find me back in a truck again, Chris.
No, I'm disappointed to hear that. I thought what a perfect time to have you back in the booth is when golf returns to the Olympics next summer. Yeah. Seemed like a perfect tie.
But those guys, Tommy and those guys at NBC and Golf Channel do it. Tommy does a great job. I have a huge amount of respect for him. As you know, you and I have talked about him and Lance and and the folks that do golf on network television a number of times. And I have a huge amount of respect for those guys, and they do a great job. And golf is hard. Producing golf on television it's the hardest sport to produce on television by leaps and bounds, which again, you and I have talked about, just because there are so many balls in the air, literally. I mean, it's not one ball. It's not one field of play. It's not one offense. It's not one defense. It's 100 guys out on the golf course on 18 fields of play, and everybody's playing offense. Nobody's playing defense, and they never take a TV timeout. So it's a really difficult job to do. And the guys that do it for a living on those networks, I have a huge amount of respect for.
Keith, I want to get your thoughts because you have been involved in televising golf tournaments, for so many years. And one of the things that we've been talking about on the show over the last several weeks has been around the PGA Tour's wraparound season now, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, everything got shifted around from a majors perspective and from the regular golf schedule because they wanted to get done before college football and the NFL started up. But then we've got this wraparound season where there's tournaments going on, right? There's another one this weekend. There was been a couple last few weeks, right? And I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me that they're playing more golf that nobody's watching. That and the pretense, for changing the schedule around was to get done before football. Yet they've added all of these tournaments, through the fall. Your thoughts? How do you feel about the wraparound season?
I'm not a huge fan of it for those reasons that that you've already talked about, and I think a lot of it is I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the kind of the accelerated majors season, and I ended up kind of where I was on the fence before, leaning more toward I'm not a fan of it as opposed to that I am a fan of it, because I feel like, and you even heard players talk about it, there wasn't any time it felt like there wasn't enough time in between the majors this year to really get fired up about the next one coming up. And the fact that Tiger didn't play at all between the Masters and the PGA Championship was kind of evidence of that. Justin Rose, I know, made some comments about how he didn't think it was, conducive to the best performances for the guys to have such a condensed schedule. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. And then I really think, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I really think they've lost or let go of one of their big opportunities, which was golf on Monday of Labor Day weekend. There was always a big event. It was a playoff event on the Monday of Labor Day weekend that, there wasn't a whole lot else going on. And I didn't think that, that having the season extend to, Labor Day weekend and the Monday finish on Labor Day weekend was ever a bad thing, even though it spilled out over into, college football season. And, I think they may have, been too quick to pull the trigger on let's be done completely, before football starts, without thinking that at least that event and that weekend all the way through. And as it turned out, the Korn Ferry Tour played their finals event on that weekend, and it got a lot of buzz. I noticed a lot of people were talking about the fact that it was the only golf on Labor Day weekend, and it was really exciting and really thrilling. I just always felt like the tour had this great kind of rhythm to it throughout the year. There were there were big events, there were the majors, the PGA Championship happened at, in mid to 2/3 of the way through August. And then there were a couple of fall series events to help out the guys that, maybe struggled a little bit or were trying to get their cards. And then it kind of all came to a crescendo with what I always felt like was the greatest tournament of all, which was the PGA Tour qualifying tournament, because that held the most drama. And that was played the first week of December. And, everybody got there, all excited about, who's going to keep their card, who's going to get their card, who's going to fail, who's going to make it, who isn't going to make it. It was high drama, a lot of tension. And then, economics made that, unfeasible, I guess, for the tour. And then everything just kind of shifted. And for me call me old fashioned or call me the get off my lawn guy. But, I kind of liked it the way it was. And it's going to take some getting used to for me with this new schedule. And right now, like I told you, I would say I'm a guy that's kind of I don't watch as much golf as I used to. I'll put it that way. And this is coming from a guy that used to watch everything. So.
And to your point, Keith, about accelerated majors, right? I think, and you mentioned this a moment ago. What we lost in the accelerated majors was Tiger Woods, right? I mean, it seemed like he won the Masters, and from the minute after he won the Masters, he looked like a guy that his body was breaking down. I mean, I remember seeing the party that, I think it was TaylorMade threw for him a couple of days later, and he could barely sort of walk in there. He was, kind of beaten up and sore. And then we didn't see much of him really the whole rest of the golf season. A couple of appearances here and there, but, nothing really to speak of. And I don't know if what will be, a 43-year-old body, 44-year-old body next year on the PGA Tour, if that's going to get any better. So I feel like maybe this is sort of working against what everybody is hoping for, right? Everyone got excited about the Tiger win, and we thought, all right, now there might be a second or a third. I know our good friend Matthew Lawrence was talking about how he was going to win at Pebble Beach, right, because of his history there. But it almost feels like maybe this is going to give us less Tiger, not more Tiger. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not sure. I think that's definitely a possibility. I think more, and I want to wait and see what happens next year so you'll have to promise to have me on a year from now. But, before we see kind of a true sense of what Tiger's majors state of mind is going to be. I think that I honestly kind of buy into the folks and the folks that say the theory that, that Masters win was such a huge accomplishment for him that there was a real hangover for that lasted clearly, a month because he played so poorly at the PGA Championship, but it may have been a hangover that lasted longer than that. But the fact that there was this accelerated majors schedule put the spotlight on it so much more brightly. And I agree with Matthew. I was one of those guys that thought he would perform well, contend, if not win, at Pebble Beach, and he was a non-factor. And then, at the British Open, it seemed like once he won that Masters and got that, 15th major, he was done. He was done for the year. It was like he accomplished something that so many people, and maybe in the back of his mind, he felt like maybe he'd never accomplish again. And that kind of, I think it affected him throughout the course of the entire rest of the year. So that's why I want to see what happens this coming up majors season to see if he kind of handles that more on an even keeled temperament basis, and see if he can, I have no doubt that the man will contend, if not win Masters for the next 10 years, and contend in, if not win British Opens for the next 10 years, because that kind of golf and those courses set up for people to be able to do that. Tom Watson almost winning at 69 was a perfect example. So, he's not done yet. I just would like to see what happens if he's feeling good and getting the good end of the early late window draw and the weather draw at certain tournaments, and to finally now know that he can win another major. So maybe it won't have such a drastic effect on his body like the win at the Masters had on him.
Keith, before I let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the great things you continue to do. Find your books, buy your books, and then follow you on social media as well.
Well, you're nice. You're nice enough to give me a chance to give that plug. I am, the website is keithhirshland.com, KEITHHIRSHLAND.com. You can find my books there at Amazon and at Barnes & Noble. And I have a blog that's called Cover Me Boys, through WordPress. And then on social media, I'm back on Twitter, much to the dismay of my wife, but that's at KHH Author, which is also where you can find me at Instagram. So, well, I'm kind of dipping my toe back in that Twitter, that, you know, Twitter, Chris. It can be a swamp at times. So, but I'm just pushing the books. And giving, a comment or a compliment here and there. That's my new mission on social media.
Well, Keith, I can't thank you enough for coming back for a 7th time and being a part of the show. There's so many other things I want to get into with you. I hope you'll come back and join me again real soon. Like you say, every moment that I get, or every amount of time I get to spend with you flies by. It's never long enough. So I hope you'll come back real soon.
I am always at your disposal, my friend, whenever you need me.
I appreciate you, Keith. Take care. All the best to you and Sarah and your new grandbaby. Congratulations on the new grandbaby.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
See you, Keith. That's the great Keith Hirshland. And I'm telling you, folks, you got to go read his books because they're absolutely spectacular. Cover Me Boys, I'm going in. I've said it, a million times, and I'll say it a million more. My favorite book of all time. And let me preface that by saying, and you can ask my wife this question, I'm not a reader. I'm not. I'm a USA Today sniglet. Give me a little bit, and if I'm interested, I'll read a little bit more. But as Keith talked about, it's over 400 pages. I haven't read 400 pages since I was in high school. But I picked up that book because Matthew said, this book is great. You need to read it. And I picked it up and I started to read it. And before I knew it, I was on page 300. And then before I, blinked 2 more times, I was done. I mean, that's how great this book is. So when I tell you it's a fantastic book, and coming from a non-reader, I'm telling you he's a great author. And then you read Big Flies, and I can't wait for Murphy. God knows I'm chomping at the bit to get that book to see what that's all about, and then see how the Matthew Lawrence character, what he does in that book. But Keith's fantastic, and on top of that, like I say, you go back to his time at the Golf Channel and ESPN2, and all the great stories that he has from his time, producing and directing those golf tournaments. And then, like I say, on top of all of that, he's a 10 times better person that he is an author and a producer, and he's an Emmy award-winning producer, and he's a best-selling author. That tells you everything you need to know about Keith Hirshland. I look forward to having Keith back on the show again real soon.